everyone, I'm Antonia Lofaso and welcome to my home. We are literally cooking in my home today. I'm excited to be doing this cook along with you guys. We're gonna be making linguine and clams for the Feast of Seven Fishes. So the Feast of Seven Fishes is an Italian-American tradition that's celebrated on Christmas Eve. The entire meal is basically made up of seafood dishes. And I have to say, the Feast of Seven Fish is not complete unless you have a pasta dish. And who doesn't love a ton of clams with a ton of butter, lemon, parsley, and white wine? So a couple of housekeeping tips before we start. I wanna make sure that you have your manila clams all cleaned and washed. So a tip for you guys, I love to become friends with my local fishmonger, butcher, and produce manager in your supermarket. Remember that all of these supermarkets purchase from the same purveyors that restaurants do. So any kind of specialty ingredient that you're asking for or asking for it to be fabricated or cleaned, like the clams, they will do that for you. You just have to ask. Also, make sure that you get a large pot on to boil a pound of pasta. We want to make sure that we don't break the pasta, so make sure your pot is large enough to hold an entire pound of linguine. So we're gonna start by just chopping a whole bunch of garlic, and we're also gonna chop some Italian parsley, and that's gonna be the basis of our linguine and clams. So you can absolutely buy your garlic already peeled, and that'll make it a little bit easier. I'm only making a couple of portions today, so for me, I kind of find garlic peeling relaxing. You know, there's just this kind of relaxing feeling of just kind of pressing on garlic and then peeling it and not necessarily being in a rush. Right, so we'll start with that and see how much it gets us. But peeled garlic is 100% legal. Don't feel like you're cheating it. And what I do is I kind of just hold all my garlic that's unpeeled on one corner, pull them out, kind of press it with the base of my hand, pull, and then press, pull, press, and then push, so that I know this side is where I'm gonna start peeling from. The last thing we need to do is get confused and have half pressed garlic and unpressed garlic, and then you gotta go and do it. So it's about being organized even when working on your cutting board. Okay. So there's a lot of different tricks to the trade on how to peel garlic, but I find just the old-fashioned way where you just kind of press it, peel it, separate the garlic. There's just something relaxing about it. And then also the holidays, you know, cooking doesn't have to be a stressful task where you get really excited and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, there's so much to do. Just relax, you know? You can open a bottle of wine, you can have an Aperol spritz, or even just a sparkling water, and just know that this time of year is just a time for you to relax, maybe learn a new recipe, maybe explore a recipe that you never thought that you would do, and just kind of, you know, lean into it, I guess I would say. Just lean into it and don't take it all so seriously. At the end of the day, it's just cooking and we're here to enjoy ourselves. I love how the garlic smells. Oh, it's my favorite thing in the world. My mom would start cooking for Christmas dinner, the Feast of the Seven Fish, sometimes 5 or 6 days in advance. She'd have an entire menu plotted for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, where she would be like, okay, this is what we're gonna have on Christmas Eve. This is what we're gonna have on Christmas Day. She would send out little emails and text messages and, you know, let everyone know what the entire day was gonna consist of. And it was like this, this little note of love that we got, where it was like, oh, I know on Christmas Eve when I walk through that door, I'm gonna be so excited to eat all of my favorite dishes. And sometimes she got a little creative and decided to do, to really experiment. And that was always fun. Sometimes experiments work, sometimes they don't, but either way, there's always like a really fun story for it. Okay, so I've got all of my garlic peeled, and I'm just gonna get ready to chop it. Now, there's all these kind of little stems and sort of the root of the garlic that a lot of people will tell you this matters and that you should peel it off. I don't really, it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't, especially when we're cooking at home. Like, listen, we're gonna chop all this garlic. The root is gonna get chopped in there. No one's really gonna notice it unless it's really discolored or large, that I will remove it, but I'm not gonna go through every single piece of garlic to remove it. It is a practice that we do inside restaurants, but you know, that's just a fine dining technique. I really don't think that it matters, and if you're chopping this pretty fine, no one's gonna find it. All right, so a little bit of chopping 101. I like to kind of put all of my garlic after I've got it into a rough chop, kind of into this little, I don't know, square, rectangle, ball, whatever happens. Hand on the top of my knife, my other hand at the base of my knife, I'm kind of holding it end to end, and I just go over the top, very, very gently, bring it back, over the top, bring everything back, over the top, bring everything back. You want to make sure that there's all of a sudden not pieces of garlic all over your cutting board. You want to keep it close to you, and you just want to bring your knife in a rocking motion back and forth. Okay, so garlic, just kind of off to the side of my cutting board. Off to the side of my cutting board. All right, people, let's talk about clams. Now, like I said earlier, they should already be cleaned and washed for you. But that doesn't mean when you get home that you just kind of leave them be. It means that the initial rinse has been done, the initial scrubbing has been done, and we hope that all of the sand has dislodged from the shells. That being said, you do want to go through your clams to make sure that none of them are cracked. If any of them are cracked, immediately just throw them away. It's okay if they're open right now. We want to run them over some water, put a little bit of salt on them. The friction of that water in a bowl and your hand mixing through the water, the clams then sort of rub into each other, dislodging any sand that they may be holding onto so that we don't get any grit inside of our linguine clams. So I'm going to put these back into the sink. I'm going to rinse them with a little bit of water, pour some salt over the top, give them a little bit of massage to get any kind of sand off them, and then we'll start. So you can just stick them in a bowl with some water, and then underneath, you're just kind of mixing them together. And I want you to be able to see this, and that's why I'm doing it on the countertop. When you're in the sink, you can be a little bit more aggressive with it. But the more aggressive that you are, the more these clams are going to kind of rub up against each other and dislodge any of those sand particles. And at this point too, once the clam is back into water and has a little salt on it, they'll close. They'll close if they're still alive, okay? If you see any in here that are open, okay, I sometimes give them a little tap. I'll start squeezing them. All of these are nice and closed, which is great. But I'll give them like a little bit of a squeeze, and if they close just from that prompt to close, then they're good. It means they're still alive. If you're squeezing on it and they're not closing, they're dead and you should throw them away. So we've got the chopped garlic, we've got cleaned clams, I've got a little bit of a high mineral white wine, like a Chablis, some olive oil. We're gonna finish with lemon juice, and I have my Italian parsley that we're gonna chop, but we can start the cooking process now. Okay, pasta cooking. So I've got my pasta at a perfect rolling boil. I'm gonna season heavily with some kosher salt. I'm gonna let that come back up to a boil. All that salt falls to the bottom of the pot. So we're gonna give it a little stir and make sure all of that salt is incorporated before I taste it, because we may miss something. Perfect. Pasta in. Oh, look at that. You wanna try and find a pan that has an opportunity, just like you saw, where the pasta was submerged right away. So I'm moving the linguine very gently in the water, creating a whirlpool so that it doesn't stick together. I'm not a believer of putting oil in my pasta water to prevent it from sticking. I will use a little oil outside to make sure it doesn't stick right before it goes into a pasta sauce, but not when it's cooking. I don't see any need for it. But what I am doing is creating my own little whirlpool in there, and we're gonna pull this pasta out when there's still 4 to 5 minutes left of cooking, because I want to cook that pasta in all of this incredible sauce that we're about to make. So I'm heating a very large saute pan, and I'm going to do a mixture of olive oil and butter. The butter is for flavor and for emulsification. The oil will do the same as well, but really, there is this thing that happens with oil and butter that I just think is so good. Like the olive oil has flavor, the butter is creaminess. It's a good little mixture. The other thing too is that if you were just doing it with butter, the butter tends to brown a lot faster, and when you add a little bit of olive oil, to the butter, it prolongs the browning process, so it gives our garlic an opportunity to really get nice and translucent in there. And I'm gonna do about 3 sprigs of parsley whole, and that's just to season the oil, okay, and the butter. So we've got oil, butter, garlic, parsley, and this is the base for our sauce for our clams. Now, clams are basically have their own natural broth. It's inside. As soon as they start to open, they're gonna release all of their beautiful juice, and that, along with the butter, the olive oil, the garlic, and the white wine, is gonna create our sauce for linguine and clams, okay? So, and we just want the garlic to start to open up to bloom. I don't wanna see any browning. I don't wanna see any sort of crisping. I just want to see translucence, and you wanna just smell the garlic melting into the butter and the olive oil. So again, the olive oil acts as sort of the longevity to the butter. The butter tends to brown very, very quickly, so when it's mixed with olive oil, it won't brown as quickly. We've got pasta going. I don't want it to cook too much. I'm actually gonna pull it out only a second, 3/4 of the way, okay? So that we can spend so much time cooking it inside of this broth. It's great. Oh, smells so good. Okay, going in. And we're just gonna let those guys sit in there, okay? I'm not adding any salt yet. I'm waiting on the salt because all clams, or whatever clam you're using, or possibly a cockle, all of them have different salinity levels depending on where they were harvested, what time of year it is, so many things. So I wait to taste the clam, I wait to taste the sauce before I add any salt, just to this application. So let those go. I'm gonna pull my pasta out into the colander now, and I know it's only been cooking a couple minutes. I'd rather it harder than softer. We can't go back. So pasta's coming off and just going right into a colander. If you've learned anything today from me, holding on to your pasta water comes in handy. You can see that there. So the pasta's still nice and hard. It's in the colander. And I'm just gonna let it sit in the sink, in the colander steaming. I'm gonna add a little touch of olive oil to it so that it doesn't stick together, and then we'll finish our sauce and add everything together. Okay, so I don't like to move the clams that much in the pot, okay? I wanna give them an opportunity to open up on their own before I add the wine, and I'm gonna add the wine right now. Now, everyone has their measurement at home. I'm the professional in this situation, so I'm just gonna eyeball it, don't worry. And as these clams open up, I'm just gonna start pulling them out so that they don't overcook and come out of their shell. So once they open up, they've done what I need them to do for the sauce, which is release all of their natural juice and all of their natural salinity. And now we're gonna basically make sure that they don't overcook and that we can continue cooking the sauce down to the right consistency, and we can also continue cooking the pasta inside of the sauce. So I will use tongs to pull them out individually at first, and then as they all start to open, I can grab a slotted spoon and grab them out in larger numbers. Let's see. But the object of the game here is to get all the clams open at the same time all of that wine has cooked out, so that we have just a beautiful reduced wine with all of that natural clam juice and the butter. Now, I always like to say, if you give the clams a little bit of help, right, a little knock on their door, rotate your hand a little bit and start to move them, it helps them start to open up. They're on the verge of opening up, and then as soon as you give them a little shake, a little jolt, then they really start to open up. And I'm always like so impressed by the last one standing, you know? They start to open, and then there's just one clam or two clams in there that's like, I'm not doing it, I'm not opening, I'm not gonna do it. And then obviously you gotta throw that away. But before I decide to throw away the stubborn clam that won't open up, I do a little like knock on his door, right? You open? You gonna open? What's going on? You guys are gonna open? Sometimes if you give them a little tap tap, you know, they're fine with it. See? Come on, last little clammies, let's go. Sometimes you gotta submerge them a little bit more, right? Look at this, last little 7 don't wanna go. It's like they're a little crew. They're like, we're not gonna do it. Come on, people. There they go. Come on, you know you want to. I mean, I want these clams on my team. They're like not giving up the ship for anything right now. These last little 5. 4 more to go, let's go. I'm just removing those stems of parsley. If there's little pieces of parsley that came off the stem into the sauce, that's great, we will keep that. Two last little fighters. They won't come out. Stubborn little suckers. There you go. There you go, buddy. I'm not giving up. No clam left behind. Let's go. Sometimes I think it helps, right? There we go. Woo! Okay, so I'm gonna lower that. We're gonna add a little bit more butter so it can thicken up. Now this is where holding on to your pasta sauce comes in handy. We're gonna taste the broth. We're gonna make sure that all of that white wine has been cooked out. The seasoning is correct when it comes to salt. We're gonna add lemon juice at the end, add a little bit more butter to emulsify the entire sauce. Then we're gonna add our pasta back into that sauce and let it cook. I need no salt. That's how delicious, and that's how much salinity is in those clams. No salt is needed. So now I'm gonna take my pasta, my linguine that still has a little bit of steam coming off of it. It's been oiled, okay? It's not overcooked. See, there's still like a nice bend to it. And we're gonna throw it right into the linguine sauce. Now, if you've learned anything today from me, it's 2 things. Salt your pasta water and cook your pasta inside of the sauce. That's what makes it delicious. Noodles are like sponges. Macaroni is like sponges. We want the sauce. The pasta wants the sauce. Ugh, all of the flecks of garlic that are going through. We're gonna let this cook for about 2 or 3 minutes. We're gonna finish it with some lemon juice, some chopped parsley, and we are good to go. Let's try those noodles. Still al dente. Got a little bit of water. So good. Okay, let's chop some parsley and get that lemon to squeeze. So Italian parsley or flat leaf parsley, wouldn't use a curly parsley in this application. I would definitely only use a flat leaf. Italians do call it Italian. And what I like to do is just pull the parsley, roll the parsley. A little bit of stem doesn't make me angry, okay? We can pull these pieces off, but we can use these for braises, the stem piece. We can use them for soups. You can use them for stocks. We just want the leaf here. A little bit of stem's not gonna hurt anybody though. And we're gonna go with a rough chop, okay? Doesn't need to be perfect. Run our knife over it 3 or 4 times. Just make sure there's no large pieces of stem. If you see some large pieces of stem in there, you can pull them out. Doop, 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 doop. I'm gonna cut this lemon. I'm gonna just finish with a little bit of lemon inside of that pasta. One more squeeze. And there's just so much butter and so much garlic in this noodle, which is great, but it needs a little bit of freshness, right? The high mineral white wine brings it, but then the lemon just really takes it over the edge. I'm gonna finish with all of that chopped parsley right onto my knife and into the pan. And then it's just about bringing it together. Right? The lemon juice, the parsley, all of the broth. And I like to use tongs in this application. I try not to break up the noodle too much, the linguine too much. And that's just kind of grabbing from the outside, bringing it in, mixing it, flipping it, whatever feels comfortable. Just making sure that all of that noodle, all of that liquid, all of that great sauce was absorbed by the pasta. Let's plate this bad boy, shall we? Oh, I know people like a good cheese pool. I like a good pasta pool. Right there in the center. Just like that. Then all those clams perfectly cooked and still in their shell. I like to say about 12 clams per person, right? That seems like a fair number. And just kind of put them all over, right? If you happen to eat one on the way, who's trying, so good. And then, just to finish, just take some fresh parsley over the top. Kind of pick it. And again, it's such an easy dish, but strong technique, a good amount of strong technique that goes into it. All right, I have a very specific way of eating linguine and clams. I love it served in the shell, but then I like to pull all the clams out before I start so that I can really just enjoy, right? So definitely this is for the presentation of it, but when I get into it, I just want to eat all of the clams in the pasta, and I don't want to be disturbed, right? And then I get in there, right? And there's nothing precious about this dish. You go for it. What you don't do, though, is cut your spaghetti, okay? You got to roll your spaghetti, and you got to know that this is going to be a big bite, and that's okay. And there's gonna be noodles that come out. And the right way is to bite. Whatever doesn't make it, you just bite and let it fall. That's okay. I've seen beautiful Italian women all over Italy doing it. They have no shame, and neither do I.